Hi, it's Rita with a new episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast, and this time I'm joined by 𝗵𝗺𝗱𝗃. Amy is the Executive Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions here at Monash University in Melbourne. Amy has been a client for a couple of years. I was really excited to have her on the podcast because she's got a really great story about transitioning from a very, very different career into the one that she's currently got. And what I'm looking to explore with this, with Amy in this episode is what skills and techniques and strategies has she leveraged from that previous world into this new one that she has today. Enjoy. Welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast, 𝗵𝗺𝗱𝗃. It's wonderful to be joined by you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Amy and I have been working together over the course of 12 months, and I've enjoyed working with Amy and learning more about her role, her team, the organisation that she's in, which no spoilers, I'll let Amy go into that. But Amy, I love your energy, and I thought what you can share with our listeners and other leaders is going to be so important and so vital for them. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So who is 𝗵𝗺𝗱𝗃? Tell us a little bit about you. I know, big question, especially for a Friday. We're recording on a Friday.
It is a big question. I am really passionate about what I do. Like anything I kind of put my mind to or invest in, I give it 100%, which, you know, now at my age can be quite exhausting, but it's still the way that I love to do things. So career-wise, I've had quite a diverse career. And with that, I've really followed a career trajectory that looks ambitious, but actually it's just really following passion and opportunity and seeing opportunity for me to grow, to contribute. And I've been really lucky that I've had lots of different opportunities like that. And just, I think that energy, you know, outside of work, I love to socialize and go camping and go hiking and spend time with my family and my husband and my cat and, you know, stepsons, not in that order, obviously. Yeah, so just giving life 100% and really about the people around me.
Yeah. Has that always been you, Amy? So giving life 100%, bringing that that beautiful energy and also that dynamic energy. Has that always been you, or is it something you reckon you've learnt over time?
I think I used to be quite shy growing up. So I probably was always very studious, but probably a little bit more overthinking things when I was younger. And then certainly through my career choices and as I've grown up, I've had to kind of be thrown in the deep end with stuff. And I've really, I guess, learnt to trust myself that I can make most situations work, and, you know, all that energy that you waste wondering what might happen or what people are thinking or, you know, what could play out is kind of wasted. So really trying to, and even like my current role is very demanding, busy schedule, work, travel, a whole range of things. And I just have this philosophy, I lean into every moment and I'm really present in that. And then I kind of, you know, worry about the next day or what's coming the next week later. And I kind of give myself time every Sunday night to kind of reframe and go, okay, what is ahead that week? So I don't lose sight of anything that's a bit longer term. But then as I work through it, just being really conscious and present in the moment and enjoying what I'm in and throwing 100% at that.
That Sunday night, like I reckon that's a pro tip. Just any time. Like I like doing that on a Friday afternoon, just kind of gathering the thoughts and doing a bit of a week in review. I call it the meeting with myself, which sometimes, yes, as arrogant as this sounds, but sometimes it's my favourite meeting because I get to kind of review, you know, what we've done during the week, what's worked well, what am I going to go into next week with? Is that what you're using those Sunday night kind of moments for?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also gives me the freedom to leave on a Friday. So I know some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people, evening people. Sounds like you're a Friday afternoon organizer, whereas I'm like, by the time I get to Friday, I want to check out. I want to start my weekend. I want to rest and recover and enjoy everything that weekend has to offer. And so for me, knowing and saying, but I know I do this on the Sunday night, gives me that freedom to do that and really let go and then be really present, knowing that I've then got that opportunity. Yeah, what I do is I look and I reorganize, reprioritize. I might even look beyond, you know, the immediate week to kind of the next 2-3 weeks. And then that way I'm kind of always forward planning and staying in that like longer term outlook so that it gives me that freedom each day to kind of just embrace what comes.
Yeah, I love it. And I reckon, Amy, it's a good reminder for people that when leadership looks relatively effortless, like, you know, those people that have just got their stuff together and you go, oh, how do you make that happen? It's a good reminder that that is actually more often than not the case. Like, they are deliberately working in those moments, you know, to make it look effortless. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's probably like it just doesn't happen. Hey, it's like, you know, you just don't wake up and go, yep, I'm going to launch straight in. There's a bit of planning, and it sounds like mental preparation, but also that energy preparation, right? So you can really get on in.
Exactly. And knowing yourself, because also I seem like an extrovert. I can come across very bubbly, very positive, outgoing, loud, lots of words, which is, why this suits me to have a conversation with you. But actually, I'm much more introverted. I've learned that over time. And I said, much more shy kind of growing up. And so I need that separate, like, time away from people to regroup, and that includes, even at home or whatever. I really need my personal downtime as well as my family downtime, and then the catch up with my friends, so that I can give myself fully in every moment. But yeah, I think it is really about knowing yourself as well and what you need to really thrive, and that's something that I've learned over time too. I think I probably used to dip a little bit more into the accommodating everything else and not really having those boundaries myself that make it work for me.
So when you were saying that, you feel that you probably are more introverted than what you once may have thought, now that you know that about yourself, what difference has it made, particularly to how you lead?
I think it's about knowing, well, obviously tailoring, being deliberate in terms of how you lead, depending on who the teams that you're leading are. So I've had very diverse portfolios of teams, my current role and also in previous roles, where me understanding myself and how I need different things at different times to be able to thrive, it helps me kind of understand that, what one thing that fits one team might not fit another, or even individuals in that team. So understanding everyone has different needs in terms of, some people, for example, love to be in the office all the time, having meetings, being on calls, being really dynamic, whereas other people do really value the days that they can work from home to have that deep thinking time, and that, time away where they can actually really organize their own thoughts and do the deep work. And so I think, learning that about myself has helped me realize how much other people need different things to be able to thrive as well.
Yeah. I've written in here, like, tuning in. I think for me, it's that what I'm hearing is that ability to tune in and therefore bring the best out of people, because we're tailoring maybe our request, or the way that we're motivating them, or even the way that we're choosing to understand, and we're tailoring that to what they need.
Exactly. And I've learned that as well, that I'm certainly not always right. And yet we'll be in a brainstorming meeting, for example. And this actually occurred to me when I first started at Monash, because I was brainstorming with the team, and they would all just kind of sit there and go, oh, yes, yes, and agree. And I kind of did a bit of self-reflecting, and I spoke with them all one-on-one, seeking feedback and going, why are you all? And they're like, well, we thought you had the answers. We thought you knew what you wanted. And I'm realizing that position of authority, and how people, if you are a really engaging, confident person, sometimes that can intimidate everyone else, where you're just discussing and you're seeking feedback and different ideas, and whereas it actually comes out sounding very confident. And so I think even knowing that has really helped me to understand that, and I can pick the teams or people that you share the idea, you get them to brainstorm in their own time and come back and pitch it. So I'm a big one for this, creative within individual or team, and come back and pitch it, so that you have that freedom, and you're not looking at the other faces in the room as you talk, or should I say that, should I not, and so, yeah, I really try and embed thinking time where possible. Obviously it's not always possible, but really to cater for the different communication styles. Otherwise the meeting comes and goes, the ideas are formed, and then, you leave, and people start to action, and there's a whole think tank potentially in that room that didn't get a chance to actually share what might have actually been a better idea.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And it's, it is that the high performing teams absolutely lean into that cognitive diversity. But if you've got people that are not tuned in to bringing that out and drawing that out like you've suggested, then you're missing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Amy, you mentioned so the organisation you're currently working at is Monash, and yes, your role is the Executive Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions. You've been there quite a chunk of time, but prior to that you had a very different career. Yes. And so can you tell us a little bit more about, those differences, what you were doing previously, and And what have you learnt, coming into a completely different environment versus what you knew in that other environment?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when I finished school, I got into university, but I'd always wanted to be a police officer. I'd always wanted to make a difference in the community and really not have an office job, which is so ironic now, but so I pretty much wanted to apply when I was 18 and couldn't. You have to be 18 and a half back then. And so the moment I was 18 and a half, I took my application in. So at 19 years old, I entered the police academy. And I had 22 years in policing and absolutely loved so much of it. But interestingly, after, several years of operational policing, I fell into intelligence and absolutely found a niche where I ended up going back and getting my master's and really ending up working in a really exciting space that was using analytics, data, geospatial analysis, bringing in really technical experts to try and be smarter about how we police, so predict where crime might occur, predict risk factors so we could have early intervention with community partners to really protect families and communities and young people. So a whole range of exciting things that actually transformed what I wanted out of a career. And so I ended up having quite a good amount of time in there in different leadership roles, moving up to manage a division that was created, and I had the opportunity to transform our intelligence model across the whole organisation, up to becoming a superintendent of a big operational division, which is the 3 local government areas. And big lessons across all of that, because I'd been specialist for so long. I was, surely I can't go and lead, an operational division like that. And that's one of the big learnings that I've had throughout my career. And even doing this podcast, when you sent me the email, I immediately wanted to say no. But back a while ago, I made a pact with myself that anytime I feel like that, where there's something that makes me uncomfortable, my instant reaction is no. I'm like, okay, that's something you should lean into and push and see what comes out of it. So I loved my time, in that role, and surprised myself with some of the things that I could achieve and do. And then when I reached that point, there was so much I loved about the intelligence part of my career. I really loved the executive leadership experience I got as a superintendent, because you're very much translating the strategy, driving the operational prioritization, building the community partnerships. And it kind of built on all the skills that I'd gained along the way, but made me realize that while I loved policing, there was an opportunity to actually take those skills into a completely different career path. And the role at Monash came up, and that's actually where I did my master's, is through Monash. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? Because I still wanted something aligned with community impact and a really strong value alignment. And so a role at Monash came up leading their university planning area, so student load planning and also operational planning. And so I put my hat in the ring and ended up, having to do an interview where you couldn't actually give examples that were relevant to the sector or the institution. But I was able to say, okay, policing versus, higher education, what are the similarities in terms of leadership that you need? And actually there's more than you would think. And even in terms of some of the skills that you apply. So whether you're looking at analysing crime trends and victim profiles and offender profiles and things like that, what you're trying to do is actually provide a better service to the community and keep them safe and know where to put resources and how to make decisions and how to evaluate effectiveness. And so the same sort of thing, but coming across to look at, our students and how we build really strong opportunities for students in terms of who we recruit and where they come from, and then how we plan that and how we evaluate our effectiveness. And it was actually easier than even I would have expected to really be able to translate skills across. And then, of course, totally intimidated coming into an academic sector and working alongside the brilliant minds that we have at Monash. But very quickly, again, I brought a totally different perspective. And so my ability to kind of lead resiliently through different situations that would emerge, to be able to make decisions and be decisive with limited information, as you have to be as a police officer, have really helped me at Monash to kind of offer a point of difference that's been valuable for me, but also I've been able to navigate a number of different roles in Monash.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think I so love what you are talking about there around your personal challenge around the discomfort and leading in, because they are such stark industries. I've had a lot of expertise in higher education, not so much in policing, but I imagine that it's so different But I love that you were able to go, well, hang on, there's actually more similarity here, and there are more capabilities that I have that I'm strong in that I can leverage going into this role. So did any time you had a freak out moment, did that help you around, like I've got this because I'm leveraging what I already know and bringing it into this new industry?
Yeah, and I think that's the point that I raised at the start is I've learned over time. I think I had lots of freak out moments, and I still can feel that uncomfortable feeling. But I think what I've really learned is to trust that I can work it out, most things.
Yeah.
Even in the scenario where you're catastrophizing in your own mind or you're like, what could happen here? Or actually, even if that does play out, you can work, that you've proven before that you can navigate things like that and lead your way through it and work your way through it. So I think that's given me confidence to kind of just trust my instincts, my gut, trust myself, not ignore that uncomfortable feeling that comes in. Now I'm in tune to it, whereas before I might have said no. And, something like this makes me nervous because I'm not someone that's on social media. I'm not someone that has really, I try to celebrate my teams and some of the amazing things that we do through LinkedIn, but I'm not someone who really is comfortable, self-promoting or doing something, and so that voice comes in of who wants to listen or who wants to hear or different things like that. And so that's something that I'm really focused on kind of. I know when I present on different leadership programs at Monash, there's a women's leadership program springboard that's amazing. And I've been lucky enough to be invited to present on that a number of times. And I have so many of the people attending that course reach out separately to have, follow-on discussions and to seek advice or to say that I gave them the courage to try something. And so that's what motivates me to do these sorts of things, because you never know who feels the same as you used to, or that, you're able to kind of help and support now.
Yeah, I reckon there's more that feel what you've just described as opposed to what we're led to believe, like, leadership should look like. I think there's more, in my mind, that have a little bit of that imposter, a little bit of what am I doing here? Who's listening? Who cares? What could I possibly share with them? So that's why I think your message is so powerful, and you sharing those stories is so powerful. So it's no surprise that it resonates. Particularly through that springboard program that you were talking about.
Yeah. And I remember there was one time as a superintendent in that role that I had, there was a very serious incident where I had to be the police commander. And it just happened and I just had to, right? And if someone had have asked me beforehand, I probably would have said, oh, I probably should shadow someone, because I've specialized for so long. I haven't had that kind of same level of operational experience at different ranks that others have. But because it just happened, I just had to lean into it and do it. And next thing, it resolved. The debrief really commended kind of my leadership and my approach and how I coordinated everything. And, I was ready to kind of sit there and go, well, I think I could have done this differently and that better. And that's good, because I really self-reflected on a, deeper level to what the actual debrief showed. But, you always want to be doing that. But I remember sitting at the end of that shift. It ended very late in the morning, and I went home and sat at the end of the bed and I went, wow, I just did that. And it was a moment I went, I'm going to remember this feeling, because I would have said I probably couldn't, and I absolutely did. So I think that trusting your gut in the moment and being able to just know that you've got the tools behind you is really important, because none of my team or any of the partners we were working with or anything like that would have known, that voice that you have. And so that confidence that you bring into it gives them confidence. It, alleviates other people's fears and concerns around the approach or the response. And so, yeah, that's actually one of those significant moments. I've got a few that stand out in my career as moments that I went, okay,
yeah,
you've got this.
And so you talked about, because one of my favorite stories from working with you, it was a physical challenge that you were overseas, and I'm kind of being elusive, so you can go there if you want. But I remember you kind of doing a walking tour, and I remember you saying that you were on like almost a cliff edge and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Does that triggering memories for you?
Yes.
Is that one of those moments where you had to lean into that discomfort and and your physical safety was kind of on the line there?
Yes, and I would say that wasn't one of my bravest moments, but I did do it, right? So we did the Tour de Mont Blanc. My husband and I did the Tour de Mont Blanc. And for anyone that's done that, and hikes all the time. I'm sure that, you know, they may have experienced things like that before, but I certainly saw the beautiful views. I knew that it would be very high up. Obviously, it's a mountain. I did not know that there were about 2 or 3 sections that literally the path narrowed. There were 2 of them. It was so narrow, sheer cliff drop down the side, but at least they had chains on the side that you could kind of hang on to. Then we got to one that didn't have those. So those ones, I was terrified. I just went, you know, there's no other way, and so it went across. But for the other one, there was no chain to support you. It was slippery. It was a bit muddy. It was really, really terrifying. And I kind of froze and struggled. And there was a kind of professional marathon person that comes through, and he stopped and said, "Can I help you?" And I went, no, you keep going, because they were actually in a competition thing. And he goes, no, I want to help you. I'm not going to win. It's fine. And it was a really amazing thing of like human kindness, teamwork, leaning in, you know, and I had all these people going, "You could probably go back if you want, da, da, da." And anyway, and he ended up kind of helping me across and just giving me that confidence to buffer me. But I got through, and the rest of the hike, you know, back to where we were staying, I was like, oh, I feel like I really failed. I embarrassed myself because I was so upset and I was kind of frozen in fear, you know. And then we got back to the village place that we were staying in, and we were chatting to all the other hikers and everyone, and it turned out majority of people had turned back. So even though like I felt like I was a failure, actually by, you know, leaning into the support being offered around me, by, you know, continuing with that, you know, self-talk of you can do it, da, 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 I actually had done more, you know, than most people had. And so I kind of felt this like renewed, oh, okay, actually, no, I wasn't that, it was terrifying. But yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Yeah. And was it at that point, so this pledge to yourself around lean into the discomfort, if I'm asked something challenging, I'm going to do it. Where's that come from for you?
That's just come from learning that I can, and realizing that you can put all these boundaries around yourself of what you, and particularly for women, we can tend to go, oh, there's that job that's advertised. Oh, I only meet 80% of those key selection criteria. I better not apply until I get those other 2. Whereas often, you know, men will, and I don't want to generalize, but men will tend to be more confident and go, oh, I meet 60%. That's awesome. I'm going to have a crack, you know. And so I think we can often put these boundaries around ourselves that limit us even realizing our own full potential. And so I think that's something that I've repeatedly kind of pushed myself further and further, and realized, oh, actually, you know, I can, and actually I do add value there, and actually I can lead that. And so that's a big message that I share with, you know, people that I kind of mentor and coach and support, but also, you know, my teams and direct reports, is around that. You know, some people don't have big career ambitions, and that's absolutely fine. Like they're really happy in the technical role that they might do, or they're really happy with where they are. Absolutely. Even within that, they can still find opportunities where they want to challenge themselves or stretch themselves. So it's not always about career growth or applying for, you know, the next job. It's actually about, within whatever it is that you're passionate about, finding those opportunities to stretch yourself and grow. Yeah, and so for me, that's just been something that over time I've kind of tested, you know, initially in safe ways, and then some ways where I've gone, oh, and, you know, almost blocked your eyes while you're saying yes. And then seeing that more often than not, it absolutely works out, and you learn something, you unlock something in yourself that you're like, oh, I love that so much more than I expected. Yeah, and I love that feeling too, of kind of setting a challenge for yourself and then realizing how capable you are, or, you know, what an impact you can have.
Yeah. When you were talking about the critical incident, when you were policing and you had to step up as I guess the commanding officer, it might be the wrong terminology, but and then reflection, like that was, you know, you get the visual of you then coming home in the late hours of the night, early hours of the morning, and just reflecting on, my gosh, I did that. I would it be right to say there wasn't a lot of thinking time for you there? Like you just had to be on because it was what was required of you?
Absolutely, I had to be on. And even though it was a big operational incident, all of my foundations actually, and this is another example where you can really, I think the other thing that I had common experience with people, that they'll pigeonhole themselves because that's their expertise. That's the area that they work in, but actually skills are so transferable. And so even though I specialized in intelligence for a lot of my career, a lot of that is about when you stand up an intelligence cell around a critical incident, and how you have to make sure that you've got, you know, certain teams working on different aspects of it to make sure you're getting that complete picture. You've got to have the stand-ups where you're sharing that information and intelligence and making decisions. You've got to link in the partner agencies and make sure that they're across it and responding the way that they need to. And then all the while keeping your mind ahead to go, okay, beyond this incident, what do we have to start thinking about rehabilitating the community or about providing additional support afterwards? And so all of those skills that I'd learned through intelligence directly translated, although it was in a much more operational response setting. And so that as well was a really good kind of reflection to go, oh, actually, you know, all of these, every skill that you gain along the way is so transferable across different portfolios, different disciplines. Obviously not if it's a deep academic specialization that you need or something like that, but, you know, general management, operations, leadership, strategy, analysis, intelligence, all of those sorts of things are so transferable as skill sets.
Yeah. They, yeah, I think it's such a good example of being able to do that intentional switch and really move into, you know, something completely different. What do you miss about leading at 𝗵𝗊 that is different to leading at Monash?
So I think I miss those amazing people in 𝗵𝗊. So I miss the people, and obviously I'm still, you know, friends, have a good friend network of people that I'm still in touch with. But I think there's something about, and this is where I draw similarities actually to Monash and to higher education, is that police often join, and I think it's changing, you know, culturally, but certainly when I joined, a lot of the people that I joined the police force with are still in the police force. So people have very long-term careers in policing, and then alongside that, they've got the public service staff, public sector staff providing enabling support and expertise across the business functions and, you know, IT and all of these different things that support the police as an organisation. Very similarly in higher education, you've got the academics who often, you know, their life is their research and the teaching that they do and this amazing contribution that they have to society and everything like that. And they often stay their whole career, you know, within the higher education sector. And alongside them is professional staff, which, you know, I lead functions of, that enable and support the work that they do. So, yeah, there's actually a lot of similarities where I didn't expect it to actually feel more like kind of home in a different way as it does. But yeah, so I'd say I miss the people. I think initially in the first 12 months of moving across to Monash, I missed the pace, you know, the fact that you 1 minute you'll think you're doing one thing and the next you're out at some sort of critical incident or something like that, or there's something else happening. And I think you get desensitized a little bit to that's just kind of the norm. So I would kind of, for the first 12 months, sit there and go, oh, is this it? Like, what else, you know? Because you're used to being that kind of readiness to kind of go at all times. And then I think the other thing that I found was I really had to learn about, you know, you can't, I'm trying to think of a way to explain this, but basically I'd be in meetings and people would be so upset about something or so stressed when I first started here. And I'd be like, you know, it's fine. It's not a siege. Like, we're fine. But I had to really temper that and go, there's not anyone who works here as experienced. So actually I need to empathize and understand and respect where people are at, not where I've kind of been. So that was probably a big shift for me in terms of the way that I lead and understand people's experience and things like that. And then now, like, I've absolutely loved it. So I've only been at Monash for 8 years. And I'm so lucky, like, how lucky am I that the first career I chose, you know, 22 years, and then this one, which was such a pivot in so many ways, has given me just as many opportunities to do, you know, diverse roles, to gain experience, to build networks. And yeah, so I feel really, really fortunate that it's worked out the way it has.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And it's, I think, you know, the latest research is telling us that so we will change careers, and particularly those in generations, like one of my kids is a Gen Alpha, then I've got, you know, Y, so that, you know, anywhere between, say, 15 through to 30 years of age, they're going to change careers 3 to 7 times. And I was talking to someone recently and they went 7 times, and I went, yeah, you know, it's up to 7 times. And they went, surely not. And we both went, oh my gosh, it is like 3 to 7 times. So I think it's going to become more normal than not, you know, to have those maybe not stark differences, but I think it's your point around, I've got a toolkit and a tool set here, and I'm going to use that to I'm going to leverage that. And it's transferable. It's never wasted. You know, any education we have, any training, any development, it becomes ours, and we pick it up and we repurpose it, in a way that then fits for this next career or next job.
Exactly. And I guess I was lucky as well, because in that 22 years in policing, it's almost like I had a few mini careers within that one organisation. And then similarly at Monash, I've had quite diverse roles. So yeah, so even being able to, I really enjoy that about an organisation, being able to really build the networks and the connections and really understand it, but then have different perspectives and different opportunities. I think it helps you, like in my current role, I wouldn't be able to be as effective as I hope I am if I hadn't had that faculty experience and that really deep grounding in leading a faculty's professional service functions, and engaging with the academics and understanding their business and understanding the students and the experience they have and want and need, and so all of that kind of helps shape the different roles that you have and the perspectives.
Yeah. Amy, obviously you've talked, about being able to leverage those skills, which I think is very deliberate. That we are all about being deliberate in how we lead. So in what other ways do you feel that you are really deliberate, particularly in how you lead your teams and your functions?
Yeah, I think I love the philosophy of it. Like, I know from when we did our coaching sessions and learning about it then, but then also refreshing it, just reading it before the podcast. What I really love about it and resonates with me is, one, the values kind of alignment that comes through it. So knowing who you are, that self-reflection, and then the values alignment of, the organizational values, and then how you lead to enable that with the, organizational strategy. But also, I think being really deliberate about how you lead teams and change. So I am someone who, I really love leading transformation, but I love doing it in a way that's very sustainable and long term. So the kind of human-centered approach to it, where it's about really, if I'm leading a change project, I want the people that I know are going to be either impacted the most resistant. I want them to be the ones helping me design it and helping lead and come up with things. It can slow things down, it can be harder and more challenging, but I'd rather know all of that then, because if you don't engage those people along the way, and if you don't have that kind of approach and take that time, often what I've seen over time is that change will come in, people wait it out, a leader will move on, and then it will revert back, because you haven't kind of won the hearts and minds and done the heavy lifting to actually shift everyone along with it. So I definitely, that resonates with me in terms of the deliberate approach of doing what's going to be best long term for the organisation, not just what's going to tick a box or give you a good example for your next resume and things like that. And I think for me that's a big perspective, and what I connect with people a lot as leaders around is this: what's best for the organisation, what's best for those teams, what's best for our students, what's best for the academics. And that really drives me. And I think that delivers the best results in the long term.
Yeah, there's and I think that links back to what you said earlier on, which was that, one of the reasons I heard you talk about getting into the police force was about serving the community. And what you've just described there is you're serving then a different, it's your community now, right? So it's those stakeholders that are part of your ecosystem now. There's still that, serving them.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I love about, totally different career paths, but it is very similar in terms of the values alignment for me.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of deliberate leadership that I always think of is I am, bubbly and positive and all those things, but I'm not afraid of the courageous conversation. So I'm not afraid to actually give feedback, to call things out, to give my opinion and have someone disagree, to, navigate whatever is going to get the best outcome. And I think sometimes when you have a kind of bubbly personality, it can be mistaken that, you can't do that kind of thing. Whereas I actually, I pride myself on always saying the thing really upfront. So for example, over time, and I won't say where or when or whatever, but over time I've come into new roles and it's like, oh yeah, that team, don't worry about them, they're just problematic and blah blah blah, or that person, they're not going to deliver for you, but don't worry. And then you look into it, no one's had performance discussions, there's no formal coaching that's been given, there's no development. It's just at some point people have just kind of written it off as, oh well, that's just, we'll focus on the high achieving people and we'll just leave them there. And often what I've found is when you have those open conversations with those people or teams, they're not happy either. They're not fulfilled in their roles. There's something that happened along the way for them that made them disengage, and it might not be the right role for them, but actually supporting them through a process of either professional development or, finding another position, or in other cases it's had to be, not renewing contracts and things like that. every single time that person will go, oh, I'm so glad that happened, because it set me free from what I didn't realize was weighing me down so much. So I think it's really important to have those conversations early, to make sure that there's no surprises for anyone, that everyone has the full opportunity to thrive in their roles. I think that's something that I really prioritize.
Yeah, and that certainly matches in with our definition of that intentional, deliberate leadership, because you're not shying away from those conversations, and you're doing it for the good of that person. So
Exactly.
your intention is good, and I think when we're doing that, they may not always like the message or agree with it, but there's an opportunity for an honest conversation where each person gets to put their view forward.
Exactly. And I think it also builds trust, because I think the people that either whether it's my direct reports or people around or colleagues or whatever, they know that if I'm going to say something, if I have a piece of feedback or an opinion, I will share it with them. It won't be that I'm going around behind the scenes. And, so I think people can really lean into it when they know that that's what you're motivated by. And it's actually to have the honest conversation with them directly, and not the kind of, politics of anything or playing into anything else or whatever. And so I feel like that builds trust to be able to open up and have these really robust discussions too.
So you've talked about deliberate leadership around, being values, having that values alignment, which I think is super important, and part of that work is what are my values. In fact, I was talking to my 18-year-old daughter this week, and she was thinking about a decision, and she said, I'm going this way because this aligns to my values. And I had a quiet,
well done as a mum.
Yeah, I had a quiet high five moment as a mum. And I'm like, yes, because often she'll be like, can you stop with that coaching stuff, please? It's a bit like broccoli, it's good for you, but you don't always want to hear it when it's from your mum. But that values alignment piece is so important. I reckon I was surprised to hear that from her at such a young age, because my experience, I don't know, Amy, if this matches yours, but we don't always get that values alignment early on in our careers. Like, she's a first-year university student. We often get it later, like much later. Has that been your experience?
I think I always had it. I just don't think I was confident enough to not just kind of fold within the norms of whatever I was working in or whatever. So I think I always had it, that gut feel where you're like, oh, I don't really like the way that this is playing out. But certainly, when you're a junior person first entering the police force, you don't have that confidence to go, to speak up. And so I think I always had it as a gut feel, but then I don't think I had the confidence to actually be able to articulate it or to be able to shape things in that direction.
Yeah, and that's good, because maybe it sits within us, because really it comes down to often the way we've been brought up and the different environments we've been exposed to, whether it's school or whether it's a sporting club, or those rules of engagement almost, and the culture of those places, like the way things are done. I reckon it has a big impact on our values, right, and what we hold dear.
Absolutely. I think it shapes it completely. And I think you are, as a young person growing up now, I think young people like, your daughter are much more confident in speaking up about what aligns and doesn't align, particularly within workplace settings, which I think is challenging a whole lot of sectors and workplaces. But certainly when I did, that was not encouraged. You just, head down, focus on what you had to do, and that kind of thing. And so, it's quite empowering to be in situations now where you can really lean into those values and then actually shape the workplace and the response and the teams and all that to align.
Yeah, and that means that everybody then can be thinking about, like, a value of teamwork or integrity or trust, which are typically, and I'll pick on them because they're the ones that, they could belong to any organisation. I think the power of it is when an individual could look at that and go, well, it's my interpretation of how I build trust, or kind of things, the signposts that tell me that I'm in a trusting environment. Like the one statement that sits underneath each value, I reckon that's like, it's a bit superfluous, because it's like, well, it can mean different things to different people.
Yes, absolutely.
That alignment piece is huge. So you've talked about values, you've talked about, how leading teams change, thinking about what's best for your stakeholders, being upfront, and then obviously trust. If you had to pick, 3 to 5 words, even 7, I don't mind, but what do you reckon are the characteristics of a deliberate leader in your mind?
So I think someone that is, as we said, kind of always bringing it back to the organisational strategy, the values, but then also, you know, their own and what's authentic for them. So I think being able to lead with purpose and with authenticity, people see that. Like if someone chops and changes the way they are depending on who's in the room, or you don't really trust that they're going to be saying what they actually think, or, you know, it's very hard to really lean in and follow and contribute and, you know, collaborate and all of those different things. And so that kind of permeates across. So I think that authenticity really grounded in, you know, who you are as a leader, but then also that ability to self-reflect and realize that you might need to adapt your style, you know, even though you're still being authentic to those core values and core, you know, strategic direction and operational priorities, whatever it might be, but you're actually still able to self-reflect and realize you need to adapt. As we talked about before, you might have a team that, you know, needs certain engagement in a certain way and might be really quite open to big debates in, you know, in collaborative spaces and things like that, and others that need more deep thinking time. And so it's about also being able to self-reflect about your impact, and what you prefer might not be the best way that everyone else is able to shine as well.
Yeah, beautiful. I reckon we've got a bunch of, so we've got, like, you know, that ability to align to organisational strategy values, but then you called out authenticity, purpose, that self-reflection. It's huge, right? That awareness.
Yes.
And I loved what you added to that bit, that it's noticing and knowing your impact on others. It's one thing to be self-reflective and self-aware, but I think leaders that are deliberate then really think about, well, I've got to modify or change or even leverage that approach, because it is then about the impact, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then adaptability, which, my gosh, we need it now more than ever, right? Because
yes.
what's looming. I have a left of field question for you just on adaptability. Has AI changed the way you lead?
Interesting question, because that's one of my missions for this year, is to embrace AI more.
Yeah.
I think understanding its potential. So we've got a number of projects looking at AI automation of our admissions processes, for example. So absolutely, I think it's changed the way we go into solution mode. So I think, you know, historically it's been, okay, what do we do in terms of process, people, you know, our systems, things like that. But now I notice a real shift where, you know, myself and other leaders are now going, okay, but actually, how could we, asking the AI question first, how could we embrace AI to help us with this? You know, we're in an environment of constrained resources and budgets across the board, like across sectors, across the world at the moment. It's not, you know, not just in Australia, it's a global economic situation that we see occurring. And so everyone has to think smarter. And so AI offers that opportunity. And I must say, I'm amazed. I mean, if I think about when I was growing up, you know, I actually caught up with some friends that I went through the academy with last night, and we were reflecting on, you know, adolescents today and their experience with mobile phones and AI and all of that. And we were talking about how we used to have to, if you got a phone call at home, you know, you'd have to stretch the cord as far as you could out of the kitchen to have the conversation, you know, and you think in our lifetime how far it's come. But now, even with AI, remembering it being, you know, ChatGPT and now how quickly it has evolved, it really just shows that, you know, we have to be leaning in. That has to be something that we're going, okay, what can that do first? And then how do we then free up our capacity to focus on the more strategic things, or the you know, deeper thinking, innovation in a different way. So it's not about rethinking resourcing models, because we need all the people that we've got. It's about how we can use that to mean that they're not doing a lot of that kind of grunt work and administrative work, and, you know, that churns up so much of people's time, to free them up to do the higher value work that we haven't necessarily had all the capacity to do.
Yeah, great. I really like that that approach, because I think it's, and I love that you've made it your mission. You know, and a lot of leaders, I'm not hearing too many that are worried, in the sense that they're trying to integrate it. So it's right, rather than fight it, actually, let's integrate how we're going to use it. Let's use it in a really smart way. Let's use it to make our work even more interesting and give us that time and space to do some of that deeper thinking, that conceptual thinking, design work that, you know, maybe we once upon a time would only have gotten to maybe once or twice a year. And then even in that design and conceptual work, most people now are using it as that thinking partner. So whether it's, you know, you're having a conversation with it, whether you're prompting, I reckon the coolest job in the last 12 months is like a prompt engineer. I reckon, like, I'm like, is that a thing? That's a thing. Like, people are, you know, there is an absolute art to being able to prompt it. So you're getting some quality stuff out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've noticed the summaries that come out of meetings when people use the AI function in Zoom, for example, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like the amount of time that cuts down and how much you can then leverage that information to share and create kind of knowledge banks. And it's been, yeah, game changing in that way too.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone's got an excuse now to walk out of a meeting and go, oh, I don't know where we left that.
Yeah, I didn't write that down. Exactly.
No, like, and you don't need to. You can be more present in that conversation.
Exactly.
So, Amy, where I want to finish today is you've already given us one of your deliberate leader pro tips, which is your Sunday night kind of reflection. Are there any other kind of pro tips, hacks that you believe make you more deliberate as a leader that you're happy to share with others?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I also I try, so sometimes you obviously have to just be reactive and it has to occur in the moment and it's fast-paced, dynamic, and you have to deal with whatever's in front of you and respond quickly. But wherever possible, sometimes there's so many, you know, big ideas and things that we want to do, and I really try and carve out the time to really think through approaches to things. So it might come through as a very specific requirement or a very specific kind of approach that we want to take. And I actually really try and create the time to go and understand the outcomes that are trying to be achieved. What are we trying to achieve at the end? What is the problem that we're trying to address? And then give my teams and, you know, even myself the opportunity to brainstorm other ways that you could actually potentially get the same outcome or address it. Because I think sometimes we can end up being so reactive that you take certain paths and you don't really use that opportunity to think, this is a chance for innovation. This is a chance to rethink the whole thing, actually. So I think stepping up and back and out of the immediate moment is really important. And then I've also had some experiences where I've gone to workplaces where the culture from above and across and, you know, underneath is very almost, I guess I'd call it a little bit rule following. And I don't mean the rules that are like the legislation that you actually have to follow, but like just this, oh, no, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way that this person likes it to be done, or this didn't work, you know, 20 years ago, and da da da. And so actually being able to challenge that, I've found creating space for teams, whether it's, you know, your peers of the executive team, or whether it's your, you know, your actual teams, or even colleagues across different areas where there's connection points to other portfolios and things like that. Actually creating time and actually having a meeting that's not about that specific problem that you're facing, but more like a think tank, like how could we do this differently, and give the freedom to go. It doesn't need to be realistic. It can be, no one's allowed to say no. The words that you're not allowed to say are, we've tried that before and it didn't work, and obviously you want those reflections before you proceed with something. You do need that. But when someone comes in with that, it shuts down the conversation immediately, whereas often it can organically, as you know, talk through it, and as other people overlay different ideas, it becomes something quite different. So I found through that we've identified a number of good strategic opportunities that we've been able to do that weren't obvious from the immediate, you know, conversations that were taking place or priorities in place, but they've been absolutely game changing. So I really like to carve out time for that pure kind of innovation. What could we do differently? You know, whether you pick a theme or a specific challenge, and then really freeing the conversation up so no one can kind of shoot down an idea or say no, and not even worry about whether it's plausible, because it might not be now, but actually maybe, you know, with AI, maybe in 6 months it would be. So yeah, I found that a really effective strategy as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And off the back of that, I reckon what I'm hearing there is a lot of psychological safety. There's a lot of trust, obviously, you know, in the team to be able to say, let's play. Like, this is our sandbox today. Let's play. There's no wrong answer. Like, there's just safety and trust in that, right? Because people are like, yeah, we can truly be creative, truly be innovative when we are allowed. And there's no, you know, obviously you reference there's always going to be a governance framework and legislation that we need to follow, but
Absolutely.
That's kind of goes without saying. But everything else is a no holds barred. Like, let's just kind of think and create, which sounds very freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the busy churn of the day to day and the pressures, and as I said, it's not just our sector feeling it. I think, you know, friends I've got in completely different sectors having the same kind of experience at the moment. It's having to do less with more pressures, very challenging environments. And so creating that space, it's actually like a weight off people's shoulders too, because they can get absorbed in the pressures of the day to day and what needs to be delivered. Whereas actually that moment of stepping out and seeing and thinking longer term horizon, and it's quite fun and it is quite freeing and it is quite exciting for people. And so I think it brings real energy. And in the end, at the last workplace that I did this in, which was in a faculty, it was actually people going, when's the next one? When's the next one? We had all these people wanting to come. So we ended up actually having to make it quite specific theme based and then invite people in, because it would get too big and then it wouldn't be as effective. But yeah, it became a real kind of game changer culturally as well, because people really did just lean into it and get really excited to be able to have that time. And then especially when we could demonstrate that it led to results where we actually, got new revenue streams or kind of transformed something fundamentally that made a huge difference. People, get excited by seeing that too.
Oh, that's great. And that's a great tip, I think, Amy, for people if they're thinking about how do I, unlock some creativity and some playful or almost thinking. I think it's a great way to do it and a safe way to do it too. Amy, you've left us as usual. I love these conversations because I end up with pages. Like if you can't see it for those not watching, but I'm waving up my pages. So thank you, Amy, for sharing your pearls of wisdom that truly do make you a deliberate leader. And I think that energy is infectious, and I reckon people will be pretty lucky to have you as their leader, but also have you, leading the team. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for your time.
You've just heard Amy Gledden on the Deliberate Leader podcast, and what a great set of insights that Amy was able to share with us. So firstly, there's that massive career change, right? From Vic Police being a superintendent, then finding her way into a completely different role at Monash University. Amy leads a pretty big function there now and certainly has been able to establish herself very much as a deliberate leader, but also leverage so many great things that she learned while she was in the police and really bring them across to a different kind of leadership and academia. Amy left us with some hints in terms of what helps her to be more deliberate, and I want to share those with you. But the first thing she said was to carve out time to think, understand outcomes and problems. And she really deliberately does this. For her, it's a Sunday night, but she really spends the time very carefully curating the diary and really looking at where is she going to spend that focused time to work on the things that are going to make a big difference. She's always looking to brainstorm other options. She's looking for chances at innovation. And the biggest underlying theme for Amy here was really around bucking the trend and not having to do things in the same way, which you can imagine in a university environment is different and unique when there's very established, processes and systems and traditions, if you like, that exist. But the thing that she, really talked about was this think tank, having the freedom and really enjoying that time in the think tank, but that time for space to reflect. And I reckon that's what makes Amy such an amazing leader to work with. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast, and I'll see you very soon.